Why did Lacan choose RSI as the title of Seminar 22? Because it's a careful and sustained exploration of the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary, you might say. This isn't false, but it's also not the whole truth. At the start of Seminar 22, Lacan also invites us to see RSI as R-C, which is not an acronym to be deciphered, but a saying to be read aloud. You see, in French, the letter R is pronounced err, meaning to drift or wander astray, a suggestive nod to Lacan's previous seminar, Le Nom du Père. And when we add C, not the letter C, but the French SI, meaning if, our ears hear something more. Si, if it strays. Listen even closer, even through my bad French, and you might hear another word. Heresy, which means exactly how it rather sounds. Heresy. From RSI to RC to RC to heresy, what is Lacan telling us, by God, at the start of Seminar 22? The same thing he's been telling us for a while now, namely that Lacanian psychoanalysis is an invitation to stray from established clinical and conceptual paths, ever daring us to wander, even errantly so, into uncharted analytic territory, often to the point of apparent heresy. In this sense, it seems to me, Seminar 22 isn't just a careful and sustained exploration of real, symbolic, and imaginary. It's a divergent, heterodox study of these classic Lacanian registers. And not one register at a time, I would add. Not one register at a time in the sequential line of inquiry. As we're going to see, I suspect, in Seminar 22, Lacan wants to study all three of these registers at once in a certain planar diagram, the wild redrawing of which in Seminar 22 further attests, I think, to Lacan's belief that radical psychoanalytic thought often requires us to err on the side of heresy. And you know the diagram that I'm talking about, right? It's the one we've been drawing for several series now. It's the one on your screen right now. It's the one fresh from page 20 in our readings for this lecture series. It's the Borromean knot, which, if you look carefully, is not much of a knot, really. It's more like a braid, a weave even, which in turn allows us to ask the question, what happens when it becomes threadbare? When the cording starts to show through. But if you look at this thing, it doesn't really function as a knot. It looks more like a linkage series of sorts, a weave, or as I prefer it again, a braid. And you know how braids work, right? Or more importantly, when they don't work, you know that as well. If you remove any one strand in a braid, the other two strands fall apart. Yet another lesson I learned from my daughter before Lacan. What matters here at the start of Seminar 22, and thus our series as well, is the fact that this is a drawing of a Borromean knot that we're dealing with here. It's a drawing on your screen right now of a Borromean knot. Remember when I told you back when we were messing around with Seminar 20 that letters are really just flattened knots? Think back. It's right there. It's also from Seminar 20. Well, the same logic applies here with the diagram on your screen. The Borromean knot with which Lacan is asking us to think through his three registers in the mid-1970s, real, symbolic, and imaginary. This Borromean knot with which he's asking us to think is a flattened, two-dimensional planar diagram and nothing more. It is a 2D representation of a 3D topology. Which is also why Lacan, at the start of Seminar 22, introduces the Borromean knot by way of the imaginary. Grab the packet, meet me on page 18, and you'll see exactly what we're up to here. I rush across the room to grab mine in great excitement to share with you what's happening here. On pages 18 to 19 leading up to the diagram on your screen, which is a reproduction of the one on page 20. Check this out. What register, Lacan asks, does the Borromean knot belong in? The symbolic, the imaginary, or the real? I am setting before you today what I will later allow myself to demonstrate. The Borromean knot, to the extent that it is supported by the number 3, is in the register of the imaginary. And again, further down that page on 19, the Borromean knot belongs to the imaginary. Why, though, the number 3 here? I don't think it's because the Borromean drawing represents the three-dimensional topology of a knot, but instead because it represents the relations and non-relations between what Lacan now understands to be the 3 dimensions of human being. And that's really what his registers are: real, symbolic, and imaginary. These are, for Lacan, 3 dimensions of human being, even the 3. Here, again, just as it's always been, and as Lacan has become increasingly explicit, the magic number of analytic theory and technique is 3. I can't emphasize this enough. Lacan finally is clear and consistent about this in his previous seminar, Seminar 21. We count 3. But 3 here for Lacan, it ain't just a number. 3 for Lacan is a count. We count 3, not 2, 3, but the number 3. I can't emphasize this enough. You've heard it from me before. When Lacan says we count 3 in psychoanalysis, the watchword here is cardinality, not ordinality. This is what he has in mind. Not the ordinal sequence 1, 2, 3, but the quantitative fact that there are 3. I would, though, add this. There is a bit more to this quantum 3 than meets the eye. In Lacan's thought, we must count 3 in order to count 2, and we must count 2 in order to count 1. This part is crucial. No 3, no 2, no 1. Recall what I told you in our last lecture series on Lacan's third Rome discourse, La Troisième. In order for us to perceive something of the one pen, one hand, one face, one voice, we must also, even if only implicitly, consider what it's not. A pen that's not my hand, a hand that's not my face, and a face that ain't my voice. The logic here is really quite simple. Don't try to be smart with this. You'll miss it if you do. In order for something, anything, to appear in the foreground, it must do so against a background which it is not. No background, no foreground. No ground, no figure. No context, no text. Haha, there's another weave for you. Text, as we learned from Derrida more than any other, is fundamentally a weave. Hence Lacan's definition of the signifier, and there is no other. The signifier is what represents the subject to another signifier. In other words, another signifier which it is not. And by extension, Lacan's theory of language. Language for Lacan is, as it has always been for him, a differential system of signifiers, each representing subjects to other signifiers, which, again, it is not. Pick either of my cats, my beloved cats, whom I do not compliment enough. One named Preach, the other, as you well know from our series on Seminar 16, named Lucifer. Pick either one. Each, as you know, is a fuzzy, four-legged feline fucker. Neither is identical to Fuzz, reducible to four legs, feline alone, or always 100% of the time a little fucker. Does that count as a compliment? Preach, you are not 100% of the time a little fucker. And Lucifer, get close, but you're not 100% of the time a little fucker. There you go. See, I compliment them. I mean, in the case of Lucifer, I have to say she is not 100% of the time a rather large fucker. See, I just can't. But here's the thing about my two beloved cats. You also can't understand them apart from these signifiers that I just trotted out. Signifiers which they themselves are not. Which is why I follow Lacan here. My cat's relations to fuzzy, four-legged, feline, and fucker, these relations are differential. You see? Lucifer is not equal to fuzzy. Lucifer doesn't equal four-legged. She doesn't equal feline, and she doesn't equal fucker. Fucker does not 100% encompass her. But it is impossible to understand these cats apart from these signifiers that they are not. That's the differential field that Lacan understands as language. And if you want it in a little more technical terms, what we can say is this: no S2 and no S1. If you don't have the S2, you can't have the S1. Or to be a little more philosophical with this, no other, no one. And I hesitate to go this far because I'm sorry to break this news to you all, my dear masters, my dear capitalists, my fellow professors, hysterics around the world. You cannot have S1s without also having S2s. Indeed, I dare say only the analyst relishes this fact. But also anyone who follows my man, Kenneth Burke, whom you've heard me speak about before. Kenneth Burke, whose definitions of our special kind, this human being, his definitions culminate in one single statement. A statement that, if you ask me, has received far less tension from Lacanians than it deserves. I'm just going to give you part of it. What is human being? For Kenneth Burke, Man is the symbol-making, symbol-using, symbol-misusing animal who couldn't help, as a direct result, but invent the negative. Now, like Lacan, Kenneth Burke is working all this shit out in the 50s and the 60s, so when he says man, you can barf a little bit and then choke it back down and recognize that here we're talking about human being. Does any of this sound familiar? This bit about symbol using, making, misusing, inventor of the negative, it ought to. This is a stone-cold piece of early Lacan. The symbol marks the death of the thing. And this death, the endless perpetuation of my desire. Yours as well. But I digress. The question at hand here is this. What precisely is the third element, the Lacanian third, in all of this counting three? In order to have something of the one, there must always already be two. I think you get this. No S2, no S1. No other, no one. But what do I mean when I say, in order to have two, there must always already be three? Why, in other words, whenever two have gathered, will there always already be a third? For the same reason, I've been telling you from the start that the centerpiece of Lacan's middle thought, objet A, marks the minimum irreducible distance or difference between any two entities or events that allows them to appear distinct, in short, unique. The pen and the hand that it's not, the hand and the face that it's not, the face and the voice that it's not. Between each S1 and S2, each foreground and background, is a differential relation that is neither pen nor hand, neither hand nor face, neither face nor voice, neither S1 nor S2, neither foreground nor background, but something else entirely. In each of the differential relations between these twos, we encounter a third element which cannot be reduced to one or the other element in the set. Proof, once more, that in Lacanian psychoanalysis, 1 + 1 = 3. Which is partly, but not entirely, why Lacan, in what is arguably the most path-breaking moment in the seminar before this one, Seminar 21, where he redefines differential relation, the term I'm using here, as irremediable division. What, then, you ask, is the third that allows Lacan to count three? It is the irremediable division between any two requisite to the production of any one. This is a crucial part in Lacan's thought from this period. The third, the Lacanian third, and the reason why he called his third Rome discourse La Troisième. The third element here, if we can even call it that, is the irremediable division between any two elements which are always requisite to the production of any one element. So you see how we get this. No three, no two, no two, no one. Let me come at this from a slightly different angle, because this really is the baseline thought with which Seminar 22 begins. In order to have one, we must also have another. And in order to have these two, we must also have a third, which is their relation, or more precisely, their non-relation. Hence, irremediable division, that key term at the heart of Seminar 21. And again, why I keep telling you that 1 + 1 = 3. Let me ask you again, just as I did in our last lecture series on this Lacanian third, la troisième, is this third element, this irremediable division, a non-rapport, if ever there was one, is this third equivalent to the real? No. But it brings us to its threshold. Irremediable division for Lacan is the threshold of the real, which is just the opening we've been waiting for here at the start of Seminar 22. You see, when Lacan counts 1, it's the imaginary he means to index, with all of its illusions of wholeness, completion, consistency, and above all, singularity. And when Lacan counts 2, it's the symbolic he calls to mind, with all of its enunciated knowledge, language, and unconscious knowledge, Lalong. Each a field of multiplicity. Note, in the symbolic, the question is not one of singularity, but multiplicity. And how about that beloved 3 of ours? When Lacan counts 3, it's the real he helps us touch upon, even if only by stubbing our toes on its threshold. Notice, I did not say grasp. We can touch upon the real. We can brush up against it sometimes, but we cannot grasp it. We are powerless to grasp the real. Let me be clear. It is impossible for us to grasp the real. So if I had to sum it up, here's what I would say. Singularity in the imaginary, multiplicity throughout the symbolic, and impossibility on the edge of the real. This is how we count 3 with Lacan, and precisely the count which underwrites his drawing of the Borromean not in this period, the same drawing with which Seminar 22 begins and which you now see on the screen in front of you. The imaginary gives us something of the one. The symbolic is founded on logics of the 2, foreground and background, presence and absence, one and the other, S1 and S2. And the real, beyond the irremediable division between any of these 2s, the real calls our attention to an impossible third. Notice how I put this. The real beyond irremediable division, beyond the non-rapport requisite to the production of any 2 which are in turn requisite to the production of any 1. Wait a minute, you're thinking. If the real is not equivalent to the non-rapport, and in fact something beyond it, wouldn't this make our count 4 instead of 3? And what about the non-rapports between this non-rapport and the one, its other, and the real? Someone else might be asking out there. Aren't they also irremediable divisions, which in turn allow for infinitely more? Sure. And you can just keep adding rings to the Borromean knot as well. Lacan's point here is not that our count stops at 3, but that it starts there with the number 3, with 3 elements at the bare minimum. Like a braid of hair or a Borromean knot, it takes at least 3. And don't even get me started on Christian meetups, where 3 or more have always already gathered. Don't get it twisted. Paul and Timothy were never alone together. Let's be categorical with all of this. 3 is the minimum, not the maximum, in Lacanian theory and technique. It's the number with which we begin, not the one with which we necessarily end. Just as Lacan says of the Borromean knot in his first substantial lesson of Seminar 22, there must be at least 3 rings, which isn't to say there can't be more. It's on the same page we were just reading from, 19. All of this is true, but it's not the only reason why I am stressing the real beyond the non-rapport. In Lacanian psychoanalysis, we have a descriptor for this beyond. Existence. X-E-X-sistence. The real, for Lacan, exists the non-rapport, insisting there, but ever from without. In its effects, we might even say, the real is in but not of the irremediable division between any two requisite to the production of any one. Paul and Timothy would have understood, or at least they would have tried, and in trying, of course, they would have failed. So it goes with God's knowledge, which cannot be said or shown to exist anywhere. But pay attention here. Existence for Lacan is not the same as existence. And if you think I'm leading you down a religious rabbit hole here, think again. But again, don't think too hard. Meet me on page 11 of our packet. God's knowledge, Lacan says. It is certain that it exists. We have enough trouble spelling it. It exists, but only in the sense inscribed by me of the term existence, which is to be written differently from the way it is normally done. It exists, perhaps, but we don't know where. All one can say is that what consists gives no evidence of it. Note the tension here between existence and, as Lacan so well puts it here, again with a hyphen, consistence. In what consists, in what consists here on earth, in the world of public appearances, which is the only one we know, we have no evidence of what exists beyond it, which is why knowledge of the real can only be God's. But this sure as hell doesn't keep us from supposing and even imagining just that, God's knowledge, in all manner of poetry, prose, painting, you name it. From cornflakes to stained glass, we suppose and imagine God's knowledge everywhere, but only ever where it's not, if you think about it, where it can never be when you burrow down into the idea, namely in a world where things are made to consist. Time is short, so let's cut to the chase. If existence is the watchword of the real, consistence is that of the imaginary. Consistency, for Lacan, is always, and I quote from Seminar 22, imaginary consistency. Let me tell you what I mean. In the imaginary, things stick together, allowing for illusions of wholeness, completion, singularity, and to keep things numerical, oneness. This is what I mean by consistence. In the symbolic, I wouldn't say things stick together. I would say things hang together in a differential system whose basic structural element is the dyad. Call it S1 and S2, or again, to keep it numerical, call it two-ness. If the imaginary is about oneness, the symbolic is about two-ness. In the real, if we can even say as much, I would tell you things fall apart. Things go to pieces, neither sticking nor hanging together, but instead exploding outward, allowing for irreducible gaps of thirdness to open up in imaginary ones and symbolic twos alike. And all from without, from a position of existence. Now, this bit about exploding outward may sound like a destructive act, but for Lacan, it is in fact the very thing that allows for imaginary and symbolic constructions of every stripe. No existence, no existence. No holed ones, no holy ones, and certainly no holy ones. Whether we're talking about knots on the board to advance conceptual thought, or knots in your stomach to allow for clinical work, the logic of the whole, H-O-L-E, and with it the Lacanian imperative on thirdness prevails. As you know, I don't believe in beating around the bush. So I'll just put this bluntly and look forward to our next live discussion. Thirdness is exactly what makes a psychoanalysis Lacanian. And it's a thirdness earned, like any great discovery, not in the search which succeeds, but in what's found along the way, even and especially in moments of failure, where things fall apart and sometimes go to pieces. Think about it. The analysis starts with something of the one. Call it narcissistic love. Call it the name of what ails them. Call it a whodunit movie starring mommy and daddy. If all goes well, however, the analysand eventually deciphers something of the one into two. Call it unconscious truth. Unconscious truth, some but not all of which, as you've heard me say, can be known. Some unconscious truth can be said and known. Here's your symptomatic statement. The part of unconscious truth that can be said and known is the symptom. But not all unconscious truth lends itself to symptomatic statement. Not all of it can be said and known. The unconscious, as Lacan is very careful to point out in the 70s, is a field of unknown knowledge, some of which is knowable, but much of which, indeed most of which, remains profoundly unknowable. In Seminar 22, at least at the start of things, Lacan calls this unknowable field of unknown knowledge an irreducible unconscious, which is, properly speaking, not only impossible to speak, he says, but introduces as such the category of the impossible. Note that it's by way of the irreducible that we're introduced to the impossible. Or, to be a bit more precise here, it's between the possible and the impossible dimensions of unconscious truth, one part knowable, the other part unknowable, that the analysand now learns to count 3. Call it the differential relation between knowable and unknowable unconscious truths. Call it their irremediable division, even. Hell, why not call it what Lacan more often than not does? A sexual relationship which is no such thing. In short, a non-rapport. So I ask you, again, here at the end of our first lecture on Seminar 22, is this the real we're talking about? Is the non-rapport between knowable and unknowable unconscious truth the real? No, but it allows us to hold a place for it. And this, above all else, is what makes a psychoanalysis Lacanian, if you ask me. It's about holding a place for the real. But as Lacan adds in L'Étourdi, just until something better comes along. So here you have it. Narcissistic love deciphered into unconscious truth, in the irremediable division of which we learn to hold a place for the real. This, I would say, is the clinical and conceptual horizon of Lacan's thought in the fall of 1974, when Seminar 22 begins.